fund. There's the equalization fund, and the fund cannot be used up until there is identification of these marginalized areas and their disparities, their natures and composition, and thus we can come up with a policy that states how the money is to be distributed among the marginalized areas. We've had a first policy and we've done a second policy. The first policy were done by our predecessors. We as the second batch of the Commission has done the second marginalization policy. CRA, in this policy we have 14. The first policy actually was based on counties, and it was identified that there were 14 counties that were marginalized, and to share about 11.8 billion for their marginalization activities, demarginalization actually activities. So CRA recognized that there was supposed to be a proper targeting of this equalization fund, because we realized when you say counties, there was danger because the money was also centralized at the county level. So we couldn't be sure that that was an equitable way of distributing the equalization fund. So we took a different approach in the second policy where we came up with targeted areas. Because we also took into consideration and appreciated the fact that there are also marginalized areas in the so-called prosperous counties. So if a Kenyan is in Baringo County, we can't just shun off because we think that Baringo is doing better than Wajir County. So we appreciate the fact that the Kenyan in Baringo County needs the same levels of services as the Kenyan who lives in Wajir County, Mandera, or Turkana. So in this second marginalization policy, we took a different approach where we moved from the county perspective of distributing these resources to focusing on areas in these marginalized counties and also in areas that are in prosperous counties that are still marginalized. So we came up with 1,424 sub-locations for minority communities that were also identified as marginalized, and subsequently a total of 16 billion was appropriated. Equity has also been a consideration in the development of the basis for the horizontal allocation of nationally raised revenue among counties. The Commission has so far developed and used two bases to allocate revenue to counties. In the two bases, the poverty index has been used as a measure of economic disparities among counties in order to redistribute revenues. The measure is highly correlated with measures of underdevelopment and therefore is used as a proxy for developmental needs and economic disparities among counties. The poverty measure is a distributive parameter meant to promote the constitutional goal of ensuring that all Kenyans have access to basic services, irrespective of where they live. So far through the poverty index, we have allocated approximately 355 billion between the financial years 13-14 to 19-20. The Commission remains committed to ensuring that there is a balanced approach to development to ensure equity. This is in comparison to the two other formulas that our predecessors had developed, which had parameters like poverty, land. I think there were about 5 or 6 parameters, but this one now we've disaggregated into services, where we have a parameter that addresses enhanced service delivery. Then we have some parameters that address balanced development, and then the parameters that address to incentivize counties' capacity to raise revenue and incentivize prudent use of public resources. So the first parameters in the ongoing discussions about the third generation of revenue allocation formula, we have health, we have agriculture, we have other county services, which we used to call it the basic equal share, and then we have the urban services, and we have the other county services that actually have the urban services and basic share. There's a fundamental parameter here, which is the urban. Urban and cities have not had sort of direct allocations as far as finances are concerned, and this is something that had never been, discussed at a national level prioritization, which is the urban services, leave alone even being considered in the formula work. And this time round, we took a different approach where we have an allocation for urban services. And those people who live in cities, even in Nairobi County, you've seen how urban services is a struggle. It needs a different intervention actually, vis-a-vis, the populations, how urbanization is taking place. It's a real struggle. So unless we take that discussion very seriously, then our cities might as well be deteriorating in terms of services. In this regard, the third basis recommendation is sector-based. As I've told you, we've looked at the functions assigned in Schedule 4 in the Constitution. And we thought it's an equitable way of connecting the functions in Schedule 4 and the parameters listed in our formula. Because before we would have poverty, land, and Schedule 4 says agriculture, health, ABCD, like that. So those need to have that connection. And also it becomes very easy for now when it comes to tracking the resources, or as far as accountability and equitable share is concerned. So you could ask counties, you have a parameter for wealth. This is what you have received. What have you done with this money for health? What have you done with this money for agriculture? What have you done with this money for water and etc. And we have to also appreciate the fact that the formula discussion is still ongoing. Nothing has been finalized. It's with the Senate, because CRA does the recommendation and then it is subjected to the processes at the Senate, and they are the people who come up with the formula. So the sector-based approach will ensure that the financing of county governments is aligned to service delivery, as I had mentioned, and ensure that counties are adequately compensated for the services they offer to promote balanced development and incentivize them for fiscal effort and prudent use of resources. This approach is justifiable in terms of promoting equity and fiscal needs of counties. You've seen, Abraham went through 7 counties. Those 7 counties are like day and night. They're very, very different. Their development tracks, so what their needs are, their population, they are very, very different. So at any given time, apart from the basic equal share, all these other parameters treats each and every county differently with their own sort of nature, characteristics, how far they've gone since the inception of devolution. That way, that's the only way we can bring equity, because we cannot have a blanket treatment for all the counties as far as devolution is concerned. For us to enhance and support devolution, we could only treat each county with its differences and make sure that resources are shared equitably, in the sense that no county is advancing so much or so further than other counties. Of course, we have to think through the on-source revenues, leadership. There are many other aspects, but as far as the equitable share is concerned, it needs to remain as equitable as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commission will continue to partner with IPP in promoting equity, ensuring that no Kenyan is left behind. Thank you very much. I look forward to a robust, interesting discussions. And as the Commission, we are here with you until the end of the program and try to sort of deliberate the issues that we have as far as the theme is concerned, which is equitable and equity in this country. Thank you very much and have a lovely, lovely discussion. Thanks.
Coming over here is basically to underscore the fact that this is a multidisciplinary, it's a multi-sectoral kind of engagement that we need to have. At this particular point, I would like to invite Mukera. After Mukera is done, we are going to have a plenary, a short plenary, just to get reflections from the two discussions that we've had this morning, and then we shall be proceeding for the World Cafes. We're still hoping more of our colleagues will have come because we had organized with quite a number in mind. Mukera, karibu sana. Mukera is our research analyst and trainer. very well. Thank you for honoring us and making it. Good.
Research analyst with the International Budget Partnership. When we were thinking about what is it that we're going to do this year on Equity Week, we thought that there are intersections that we have not been able to highlight in the previous Equity Week, and one of them is what is the place of public participation in the equity agenda? Because we might understand what equity is, but if it's only the people in this room who understand what we're talking about, it might not bring the change in the lives of the people who are the custodian of the resources in this country. So we thought this year, how about we start discussing, is the way we are doing public participation enabling equitable distribution of resources or not? So that's what my presentation is about. And it's just, when we talk about public participation, and my bias obviously is on resource distribution and collection. When we talk about public participation and equity, what exactly do we mean? Okay, and what options do we have as a country when we are discussing issues on equity? So my presentation is on something that is very familiar at IBP, what we call public deliberation, which is anchored on deliberative democracy, that when we are making decisions about spending resources, essentially we are making decisions about trade-offs. Should we build a road? Should we build a hospital? And if you're going to build a hospital, where are we going to put it? I know many people think that budget is technical, but it's just as simple as that. We are making decisions. We all have different ways we think development can happen in our country, but it is in the conversations that we have. And that's what public participation is about, that we decide then what is the best way to reduce inequalities in our country. So this is just, this presentation is just about how do we design public participation so that we are able to have meaningful discussions that result in people getting the services they need so that they can be uplifted from what you call their level of marginalization. So in terms of the flow of the, okay, I don't think it's going to move. Is it fine? Sorry guys, something is wrong with this thing. You could move it manually. Oh, I didn't turn it on, sorry. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is just a little bit, and I've just talked about it, what we mean by public deliberation and what challenges are there with public participation as it is. And then this presentation is based on research we've been doing from 2017 to date on how Kenyans deliberate. And the findings, we have packaged them in 7 pillars of public deliberation. And we're just going to try and explain why these pillars are important and how these pillars can be used to structure our public participation. And yeah, that should be it. And then we're going to conclude. Okay, so what do we mean when we say public deliberation? We're basically saying we're not just ticking the box, yeah? We're not just going to ritually do public participation. We're going to do public participation that is ubiquitous. It's public participation that has an effect on the actual decisions. That's one thing we're going to do. And the purpose of public deliberation is, if you're going to decide on options, you have to have adequate public reasons that justify why you're doing things in a certain way, okay? And I highlight adequate because sometimes we have reasons that frankly do not make sense. So for example, we'll say we're distributing resources based on some data, okay? The commissioner talked about how do we use proxies as opposed to specific measures in distribution of resources. So we are supposed to explain then how data has been used to distribute resources the way that we are distributing. But one other aspect of what we're talking about is that these reasons ought to be public, so that when the citizen is discussing about distribution of resources, they know the reasoning, for example, for CRA, on the formula that they have, okay? That they are now recommending that we should consider services and specific services. People are open-minded, and you can tell why this is an assumption that people are open-minded. They're open to scrutiny and changing their preferences. So when we come to this room, the 50 of us, we all have different ways we think development should happen. Okay? So when we come to this room, we have a conversation, even mashinani. We all have our interests, we all think development should happen a certain way. But when we come to this room, we are open to someone saying, I don't think your reasoning is good enough because you have not considered this data, for example. Okay? So what we're trying to do here is to help the citizen understand that it is in those conversations in public participation that we can get stronger decisions on how development should happen in our country. Okay, so that's just basically what we're talking about. And I'm just going to give a little bit on the methodology. This work we began in 2017 with a robust literature review to see what's happening around the world to promote public participation and public deliberation, as we have elaborated. And then we went to various counties. And I remember in 2016, I was not this big. In 2016, I was in West Pokot, and I went for a public participation where this is the picture. This is the picture, but I'm just going to narrate it. There were lots of women in one side and lots of men in one side. And I sat through that public participation. It was for like 3-4 hours, and towards the end, people started disappearing, but no woman spoke, okay? Things may have changed right now, but this is just what happened then. At the end, I had someone say, can we have a woman pray? Can we have a woman give vote of thanks? We have to have women participating. So I went and sat next to a woman and asked them, why don't you guys say anything in this forum? And she was like, but our husbands are here. They kind of represent our families, you know? And so those are the realities of public participation. So it's not just about the numbers, for example, or the gender representation. It's whether that people can actually contribute or feel that they can contribute in those discussions. So we did go to several countries, went to West Pokot, we went to Elgeyo Marakwet, but we also organized demonstrations. We've been doing this since 2017, and we've done this. The first round we went in Mombasa, we went to Isiolo, we went to good times. We went to Nakuru, and in those demonstrations, we were trying to exhibit good public deliberation. So we had facilitator scripts, we had information packages, and we were just saying, if we're going to say that we need to be deliberative in our conversations, we actually need to see whether Kenyans can do this, or Kenyans are already doing it. So we partnered with an organization called Uraia, which has very many partners on the ground, and so they helped us to mobilize just normal Kenyans, farmers, doctors, teachers, like just in this room, you know, coming to discuss one decision in the national budget process. And I'll tell you why we chose the national budget process. And I said, if I don't say anything today, I must say this. When you look at our budget numbers, the actual expenditures in this country, from 2015 to now, the national expenditure is 85% of what we spend in the country. The county ranges between 13 to 15% of the actual expenditure. Now the question is this. When we talk about public participation, we are talking about the participation that happens in the counties, all right? And to make the matters worse, in the counties, the participation is not on the 15%. It's of small portions of the development budget. So even as we keep saying we are participating, we have to start thinking, are people actually distributing resources of this country, or just a very small portion, which is what public participation is in Kenya right now? So I know CRA did mention that they're trying to distribute that small percentage equitably, but what about the resources that remain at the national government? So for these demonstrations, we wanted to clearly involve people in a national budget discussion. And the discussion that we had is on how much to each sector, which is usually made around February, on how we distribute resources, for example, to health, to infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So that's what we did, and subsequently we now tried to incorporate public deliberations in the actual budget cycle through our partners in Baringo, Busia, and Kwale, where we were organizing pre-deliberative forums that equip citizens to participate in the actual budget process, what we are calling there as budget cafes. So the 7 pillars I'm talking about are just from this, the things that we did in all these counties and the learnings from the demonstrations. By the way, the demonstrations were not to learn about all the 7 pillars. It was just for the 3 phases of deliberation, which is the importance of learning, the importance of deliberation, which is reason giving, and the importance of having a distinct decision-making phase at every public participation. So I'm just going to run through the pillars. There they are, the 7 pillars that we have isolated that are important for public deliberation. And one of them is selection of participants. The second one is defining the decision at hand. The third one is the role of facilitators. The fourth one is the learning or the learning phase. The fifth one is public justifications, reasoning, and deliberation. The sixth one is decision making, and the seventh one is reporting, analysis, and feedback. So these pillars not only apply in the equity discussion, but all around when we're thinking about public participation. There are certain things we should be thinking about. And we're not saying this list is exhaustive, so as I present, if something pops up as you think is missing from this is the place to discuss. Good. So let's talk about selection. What do we mean by selection? Why is it important? When we're talking about public participation, it depends on who is involved. The quality of the decision that is going to come out of it, whether the decision is going to be equitable or not, depends on who enters the room. And don't think of room as an actual room. It's like who enters into that discussion. So we have to keep thinking, what is the best way to involve the citizen? And frankly, we cannot hold a national forum where every citizen is in that forum. Do you understand? So selection becomes an issue because if, for practicality reasons, we cannot go to every Kenyan like voting, then we have to start thinking who is represented in the room. But it's also a question of legitimacy. If certain people are going to be in that room, virtual or physical room, then is the decision made in that room going to be accepted by people who are not in that room? And that's a question of selection. If I feel my ideas, my interests were not in that room, then I don't consider that decision legitimate. Do you understand? So the thing is, we have to constantly think, in public participation, what are we doing to ensure that there's representation, and that we are constantly thinking that it's not possible, practically, to get everyone into the room. So how do we do it? And here are some options from literature and practice. And at the next slide, I will share a bit of what we have learned. So what we do in Kenya most of the time is self-selection. The county governments used to do, in the past few years, they used to actually go and choose delegates from different areas, which is the fact over there. But we haven't been doing any kind of sampling, random or stratified, to get people into the room. But also there are other countries where you apply to go to a participation forum, okay? So the spectrum is from let anyone who wants to come, to actually, it's not as simple as having my civic duty. There are some people who have barriers that cannot come into the room. And so we have to think of what other ways we can bring people into the room. So that's what we said, that we have open door here, but there are other ways. For example, when we talk about sampling, we know the households, for example, in the ward, are they being represented, okay? In some areas, like delegation is, and I've seen this in the market where we have participation at the village level, and then a representative from that forum go to another, and so there are delegates that are being pushed to the county level. I have not seen county to national yet. So then we have, these are the options we have, but constantly we are thinking about the minorities and the marginalized. And for our demonstrations, we were constantly thinking about the role of women in public participation. I told you about the West Pokot story. How do we ensure that women are in the room first, and then we can move to ensure that they have meaningful contribution? So this is what we just, like, this is something to think about on selection, is that we need to define who the population is. So for example, for our county, and we looked at very many public participation acts, and there's a spectrum of, in Baringo, it just says the residents. Anyone who's not living in Baringo should not come to a public participation forum. And then in other countries, it includes the residents, the non-residents, stakeholders as part of the public. So we need to appreciate what population we are working with, so that when we are talking about selection, we know that we are not missing out certain kinds. And when I talk about population, is the different parts of the population. And then, obviously, self-selection is the bare minimum, but we have to do a mixed way of selection. We can't just say we've advertised on the newspaper and that's enough, come for public participation. We know some people just don't buy newspapers, okay? Some people don't afford to buy newspapers. Some people can't read, okay? And so when we're thinking about public participation, we have to be deliberate in bringing especially the marginalized into the room. Because think about it, how are the needs of the ones who are, who are marginalized going to be brought to the table if we just rely on the majority to make those decisions, right? So we have to constantly think about that. But also is that we have seen for every forum that there's a public participation, it's a different crowd with just a few people who we are calling professional citizens, yeah? And so then there's place for a balance, there's place for having citizens, for example, in the budget cycle, go through the entire cycle. So they have a conceptualization of why the budget is important to them and why the budget would be the place to reduce their lack of public services. So that's the thing about, we have to mitigate the people who know the strength of public participation, that who are just there for their own interest, with trying to enable those people who can't get into the room. And the last one there is on stakeholders, and we're just saying that there are certain self-help groups that could help us get representatives into public participation, and this is for the counties and national government to think about. So pillar 2 is defining the decision at hand, and this is where I started with, what are people coming to discuss at this public participation forums? I don't know if I'm sure most of you have been to 1 or 2 public participation forums, and I don't know if you get the feeling like you're always discussing the same stuff. You know, we come in, we talk about our projects, and it's the annual development plan, right? We come in, it's the county fiscal strategy paper, and we discuss about our projects. And then we come in at the budget estimates, and then we discuss about our projects. And then we just keep discussing projects. You know, that has been my experience. And so what we saw is we need to start defining what decisions are being made at different times of the budget cycle, okay? And I'm just giving this because when we're making decisions on distribution of resources, it's not just about the specifics of a project here or a project there. It's also about, and I just tried to list some things here. I want to just focus on that second one, distribution across sectors. So, remember what I told you guys, what people participate in is a very small percentage of the budget. And people who read about participatory budgeting, it's exactly that we have a small part of the budget and we start to talk about it and decide how it's going to reduce our problems in public services. But I just want us to step back and say, if we are not going to involve the citizen in the decisions that we call the bigger decisions, the high-level decisions, then it's just child play. Think about it. If the citizens are not discussing, for example, what is our approach to development, which is essentially the decision around how much to each sector. And I'm going to use the national government to make this example. The national government has 10 sectors, right? And the sectors, let me just use 2 sectors. The sector, I will say, so for example, there is education sector and there's energy, the infrastructure one, right? The discussion there, we may think is too technical for Mwananchi to discuss, but think about it. If we think what is causing inequalities in this country is lack of education. So for example, we have not invested enough in the right human capital. And so then people, even if they're educated, they don't get jobs, and so we have to get jobs elsewhere. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or we think the best way to improve our country is to build the bridges, the trains, the roads. You see, that discussion cannot be left to 2 Kenyans, 3 Kenyans, 4 Kenyans. It has to be a discussion we're discussing every year. What is our approach to development? How much should we give to each sector? Okay? And so when we leave public participation to just projects, citizens miss that. And by the time you're discussing this is what we want to take to the dispensary, the decision on how much to help has already been made. So you are working with a very limited space. And even if you wanted to have impact on, let's build our human capital, then you've already lost that chance. So at every point, when you go to a public participation forum, is there clarity on what decision is being made? But the thing about decision also, it defines who has the power to make that decision and who's responsible, right? So if you don't have that conceptualization that now we're making a certain decision, then we are always discussing anything and everything. It's not meaningful to anyone. Now, pillar 3, which is quite controversial, is who runs the forum, who runs the public participation space? And what we're seeing here is just beyond moderation. It's beyond, oh, now let's have women say what of that. Or now let's have a prayer. It's beyond that, right? It's who understands, first of all, the decision at hand. okay? When a citizen is saying something that is wrong, which is misleading to the other citizens, is there someone in the room who's going to say, you know what, that data is not accurate. This is a real picture, okay? So we need to constantly think, who is facilitating a meeting? And facilitation, as I say there, is just, it's also a big part of it is learning and defining the decision, but also is to ensure that there's fairness in the substance of the discussion, so that we don't think of the I've been to Baringo and there are certain communities, Quebec knows this, that are in the Chamus, there are the Royals, who historically have been marginalized. So we want a facilitator who is not going to say at the end of the meeting, did we get anything from the Chamus community? Can you look me and stand and say something before we close? You understand? It's someone who's going to deliberately say, okay, these are the existing inequalities in this place. How do we amplify the voice of the minorities? How do we ensure that the minorities in the room are part of the deliberations and not an afterthought? So we have to constantly think. And here's something I remember when I went to the Global Market to just learn how public participation is being done. And what they had done is they had taken 4 CCs for each ward. Okay? So they took you agriculture CC and whatever, go to remind one word and give I forget now, but that's what they had done. So when they were discussing, there was something in the proposal by the government that was saying they need equipment for diabetes, equipment for hypertension, and guys were like, why do we need all those things? And there was a doctor in that. The Department of Health was represented among the 4. So he stood up and he explained, this is what happens. We are focusing on curative healthcare, yet some of these things we can be able to capture them very early. And so we need to invest in preventive healthcare. And I saw people looking at each other and they were like, that makes sense. Iten needs more diabetes kids. And then it came to agriculture. And people were like, let's put 500,000 to the cattle dip. And it just passed. And I didn't think it was a problem, until I went to the next public participation forum where someone from agriculture was there. And they said, this 800,000 will not get you a cattle dip. You need 1.5 million for a cattle dip. And I was like, but those guys put 500,000, what is it going to do? It's going to be another incomplete cattle dip. Do you understand? So we need facilitators in public participation forums who are able to, for example, say, here is a cost of reference. If you're going to put money into projects, this is how much it costs. If you put less than that, the project is not going to be complete. And you guys are witness, there are very many incomplete projects in our counties because when people are left in their own device to put resources to their needs, they know they need a cattle dip, but they are not agricultural officers, so they wouldn't know how much it costs to put a cattle dip. Do you understand? So we need a facilitator who has these tools, who has this knowledge to tell them, actually, too many small projects, none of them is going to be complete. You're not going to get the services eventually. Why don't you fund something to the point of you getting the service? And so we need people who are able to guide citizens that way. And this is what we were just thinking. Who will be able to do this? And some of this we have tried. In each county now, there's a public participation office. They have different names. And these people can be the custodian of how a public participation forum is run. What tools do you need? We've also tried, and this has been with our budget phase, that we have trained budget facilitators who understand, for example, in February, what decision is being made. It's a decision about how much to each sector. We are setting sector ceilings. So if you have a facilitator who understands that, they will tell them, wait, right now we're discussing cattle dips. What we're discussing is how much we give to agriculture. Okay? So that in the next phase of the decision, which is the budget estimate, we're going to talk about then how do we distribute resources to agriculture. Are we on the same page? So that's the essence of a facilitator. And we can have volunteers. have independent arbiters who just come to forums to help the government to ensure that everyone is having a meaningful discussion within the forum. But then we also realize there's need for an active rapporteur in those discussions. Because some of them is just math, okay? That we have put 500 in the capital, we have put 300,000 here, so if there's no one who is taking the tabulation, then we end up putting, so we've been given 25 million, which by the way is another issue altogether. We end up putting 29 million in different things, and then the county government has to decide which 4 million would be done. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we need an active rapporteur, whether it can be citizens or from the government or the CSO, who's keeping track of what decisions, what deliberations are we having, and at what point have we made decisions, so that we are able to document how public participation is being done. But also the last one is public participation for most places is happening concurrently. Okay? So we have participation happening in Ward A, Ward B, Ward C, and Ward D, and there's no guidance to help us understand, are we actually helping the people of Ward A make the decision that Ward B is making? Okay? And I just wanted to say that accident is a real accident. The one on 24 million and 25 million is a real accident in Busia. So citizens were given 25 million per ward. But when you do the math for some of the wards, it reaches to 23 million. Okay? So the thing is, we have to keep thinking, how do we give people, we have to give people what they need, and how do we help, for example, the facilitators do the job they're supposed to do. That's just pillar 4. We're almost there. The pillar 4 is about learning. And this is not just, and I'm speaking about the budget space, but even in other decisions, that if you will only contribute to a discussion based on what you know. Sometimes you can cook up stuff, but you only have a discussion on what you know. And this is about the capacity of citizens to deliberate. And I'm not talking about going to train citizens on the budget every time they make a decision. It's to isolate what factors are important for the decision we're making right now. So for example, if the decision is on how much to each sector, what would be a relevant factor? A relevant factor would be what has been the performance of the sectors over the past 5 years. So we are not allocating resources to agriculture when we know the absorption is very poor, that resource should be going elsewhere. So we are isolating for every decision we are making. What are the relevant factors? And this can be done by government, it can also be done by civil society. How can we isolate those factors so that people are able to interact with them to increase their deliberative capacity? And also just to recognize that there are different people in the room, always in the public participation forum. So learning is that place that brings people in one place. And we are saying, an accident did happen earlier, a mother lost her baby. We take cognizance of that. On your way here, there was flooding, and this has been the situation of flooding. But can we have, for example, data that says, how many dispensaries do we have in this county? If we already have existing dispensaries, is the problem a facility or how those facilities are being funded? So we are not saying a mother died, we need a dispensary. We are saying a mother died, there was a dispensary nearby, which we have in our database, but the dispensary does not have a complete maternity. So we put resources into the maternity. Or it doesn't have electricity, and these are really examples from Russia, where there's a dispensary but it doesn't have electricity. And so the problem is not, let's have another dispensary near to the mother. No. The problem would be the road network to the dispensary is the problem, is the root cause. But if there's no learning in that sense, we always say, Mwananchi knows what they need, okay? But Mwananchi is not a health expert. Mwananchi could be an engineer, right? And so we need to constantly think, how, for example, can we bring in experts in different who feel, well, my expertise is not going to be used. And expertise, I'm not talking just about doctors, it's about farmers, it's, how do you put a good capital in? What does it cost? Like, every citizen can participate if they're given the opportunity to guide the deliberations. Let's quickly go to what we saw in the demonstrations. What we saw in the demonstrations is what we did. We asked people to allocate resources at the beginning of the forum. And we asked them, how much would you give to the 10 sectors? Okay? And we had people say 10% to governance, and then 30% to education, and 30% to health. Okay? And then we told them how the donation looks like. So for example, health is a heavily devolved, not fully, it's a heavily devolved sector. Okay? Most of the spending is done at the counties. So when you're discussing about how much to expect at the national level, then you have to start thinking what functions were devolved, what functions are being done by counties. So then we ask them at the end of the learning phase, so how much would you, having learned what you've learned, having known the relevant factors, having heard from the experts on approaches to development, what would you do? How would you allocate to different sectors? And everywhere who had comparable questionnaires changed their minds. At least in one sector, they were like, oh my goodness, I did not know. Even if health is important, it does not require 30% in the national government. It's just 4 to 6%. Okay? So that's the purpose of learning, that we are all coming to discuss something that we are not all of us experts in, but when we learn, it changes our mind. Okay? We also learned that this is what we did for the demonstration, is that when you create safe spaces for learning, but think about it, one of the reasons why people are marginalized is because they have 5 minutes. When people are marginalized because they don't have, for example, exposure to information. So what we did is we had a women's only learning group, and in Isiolo, in Mombasa, and this is what happened. When we moved to the next phase, which is what I'm doing, thanks John, when we moved to the next phase, among the women who spoke on the subject of the matter, like on the subject of discussion, were the women who were in the women-only learning group. And we saw, so for example, in Turkana, we had very few women speak about how to distribute resources, but 75% of them were those that were in the women learning group. And something we discovered is, even in minorities, even in Isiolo, even in Turkana, there are women who are empowered, and those women can be used to empower other women. So when we put them in a safe learning group, these women were able to point out facts like, actually, in the governance, justice, law, and order sector, that's where the police are. Okay? So if you're talking about security in Isiolo, it's not in the national security, that's where ADF is. So when we went back, even for agriculture, I remember when people in Isiolo were thinking livestock is not an agriculture. For them, livestock should be a separate sector altogether. And so when they discovered that, when we asked them questions after the learning, they changed their mind on, for example, how much to the agriculture sector. Now, let's move to the core of public deliberation. The core of public deliberation is that we are able to generate reasoning that is agreeable. And I use the word agreeable here deliberately. That after the 50 people in this room discuss, it is possible that we don't agree. But because of the reasoning behind the decision we have made, we are agreeable to the decision that has been made. I don't know if I'm distinguishing this well. That I might come into the room thinking, we need to give more money to health because I feel like that's the way to reduce inequalities. Alright? But I come into this room and we discuss, and you say, you know what, I think we should give more money to education because if people are educated, they are more likely to know about hygiene, they're more likely to, you understand? So I might stick to the government. Country